Y'all are killing me.
I'm sorry.
Hi, welcome to this episode of The Sweet Tea in the Economy, powered by the Carolinas LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I'm Zach Anderson, and I'm one of the directors of the Next Committee. Today, my guests are Nick Randone and Richard Stevens of the Resource Connect Committee, who are in charge of getting all the ERGs and BRGs together. So thank you so much, both of you, for being here today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so first things first, do you all drink sweet tea?
I actually love sweet tea.
Okay.
I didn't know that unsweetened tea was a thing up until I went to New York.
Oof.
Yeah, found out the hard way.
Okay. Yeah, that would probably be very traumatic. I'm so sorry for that.
I will say that I grew up drinking sweet tea to the max. And when I say to the max, my aunt used like 3 cups of sugar in 1 gallon.
Ooh.
But now, as an adult, I actually drink unsweet tea. I know that's blasphemous in the South.
Clutch my purse.
Now, who has the best sweet tea that's not made at home?
Chick-fil-A.
Oh, no. You have to go to specifically a Tex-Mex restaurant.
Oh, yes. Mexican restaurants do have good.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It has just the right amount of diabetes. Like, just the right amount.
Yes.
You got to balance out the spiciness.
So, you two are the directors of the Resource Connect Committee. Tell me what that's about.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the resource committee, and when I found out that me and Nick were going to be together on this mission, it's primarily designed to engage with different ERGs and BRGs. And for those that don't know with what ERGs and BRGs are employee resource groups. BRGs are business resource groups within corporations and companies or small businesses. And with that being said, primarily our role is to go out within the, major Charlotte area and kind of be a resource or connector with other ERGs and just kind of share best practices and different things that we can do to kind of propel some of the things that we may be facing within our communities.
Yeah. And one of the best parts about being on this committee is being able to facilitate conversations with different individuals about things that different corporations and small businesses are doing to create better connectivity and conversation in the community, as well as advocate for their employees and just their customers in general.
Okay. Are you all involved in ERGs at your companies now, or what's your current involvement?
But no, currently right now at Truist, I serve on the observances board. So primarily our role is to ensure that primarily events and holidays and special observances, specifically within the LGBTQIA community, we put it in the forefront of, hey, Truist, like this is important and here's why. So that way we can kind of create, different events and different engagement opportunities with employees and different nonprofits within the area or LGBTQIA affiliated organizations to help drive employee engagement and also community engagement.
Okay, fantastic.
I love that. I've never heard of an organization doing that before, and that I think that's actually really important, and that's a really great takeaway for us to have those conversations with other ERGs, because I think a lot of organizations don't realize that there are other opportunities to, not necessarily like traditional holidays or different things that may be considered non-standard for businesses, but something that has meaning and impact. Like, this is outside of the LGBT community, but companies recently, within the last 3 to 5 years, just started observing Juneteenth. So things like that, I think, are really important in the corporate workplace, and I love that Truist is doing that. For me, right now I'm not involved with any ERGs at my organization because I work remotely, but my previous 2 organizations, I was very heavily involved. So I used to work for a company called Sealed Air Corporation, and they invented bubble wrap, fun fact. So I joined that company and immediately got involved in one of the initial ERGs that they had, which was actually at the time called the Women's Resource Group, and eventually transitioned to the Gender Equity Network and promoting gender equality in the corporate workplace. So I got really embedded into that and actually was part of the global like leadership team at one point. And then from there, I was asked if I would be interested in founding an LGBT ERG at the company, which was a huge deal because it's a very traditionally like blue collar manufacturing company. So not what you would think would be wanting to promote that type of thing in its demographic, but it did really well. And I was one of the global co-founders and co-leads. My counterpart was actually based in Poland, which was really awesome. We became really close friends. We've never met in person, but I still talk to him, even though I'm not at the organization anymore. But when I left there, I went to Ally, and Ally has a very big ERG presence. And so I joined their Pride ERG as well and was part of that leadership team before I left there. So I've been heavily involved in that space, and it's always been a really big like passion of mine to bring about conversations that may be painful but need to be said.
Yeah. There's one thing that you said that I want to touch on because we are the Carolinas LGBT Chamber of Commerce, not just Charlotte. You mentioned remote employees and things like that. And we reach all the way over to Myrtle Beach, up to Asheville, things like that. Do you have any advice for people that might not be at where the corporate headquarters are and still being involved in their ERG and what it can do for them?
It's really big.
Yeah. I would definitely say speak up. That's the biggest thing.
I would agree with that. I also think, like for me, previously when I was at Sealed Air and I had a global community that I engaged with, we had members from basically every continent except Antarctica. So, which was amazing, but it also made things challenging with time zone differences. However, I would say there's two sides to that conversation. Like you as an employee, if you're interested, you have to seek out and like ask about that information. But then for those of us that are involved in an ERG or like part of that leadership committee, we have to make sure that there's messaging and availability of messaging so that people are aware of it. And that was something I strived really hard to do when I was leading at Sealed Air, was consistently putting out messaging and making sure that the population knew about it. And I actually got to a point where I was actually speaking at new hire orientation about our ERG system. And that actually ended up becoming like a basic part of new hire orientation after a while. So I would say there's two sides to that for sure.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's one of the biggest things that we at Truist have been doing as well. Is I remember distinctly last year we had, and the year before that, like especially during Pride Month, turning the entire tower literally rainbow. So we, as a matter of fact, we also had the chamber invited nonprofits such as like Time Out Youth and some small business owners that were LGBTEs present during the event, just kind of showcasing their business. These are some of the chairs that you can get involved with. But then also too, to kind of touch basis points with our virtual teammates, we'll hold like, different virtual events, different mindful events where, what does LGBTQIA finances look like? Because that's something that doesn't really go talked about. For example, what do name changes look like? Are we connecting individuals to the right resources within the community?
And I just want to make sure that ERGs and BRGs will get into that types of facilitation for different communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me clarify that though. So Truist itself will help with making sure that we can connect the right individuals. That's primarily the charge of the ERG and BRG. However, it's not done at Truist. Let me make sure that's clear. But we will try to find through the BRG leaders who out is in the community can do so, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I think that also a big responsibility of ERGs, especially in our community, in the LGBTQIA community, is that we also have to be intentional about facilitating connections within the community outside. And that is so we can find available resources that are local or that can be put through kind of like corporate approval, if you will, so that we can share those resources with members and with employees. And one of the opportunities that I had when I was at Sealed Air was one of my colleagues who had been part of the initial ERG with me. His girlfriend is actually a psychotherapist, and specifically for LGBT teens and transgender youth. And so that was a huge like connecting line for me to have a resource in my back pocket for people if they ever need, if I felt like I ever needed to like vocalize it. And I also shared her information with like HR and with local like team members just to create that bridge and allow that to have as an opportunity. And Sealed Air eventually began offering resources through HR, like through benefits for connecting you with
Love that.
Mental health coach, if you will, for like different circumstances, and everything was obviously confidential.
Well, obviously, we are lucky to have you both since you have actually started and led your company ERGs. With that, we obviously have your committee because we did a deep dive last year, and we're listening to members and corporate partners about what is most important. And one of those things are definitely supporting the ERGs around. Since you have seen the inside of your own ERGs and BRGs, what do you two plan on doing as board members of this committee for this chamber to do going forward?
You want to go first?
Sure. It's kind of like the first quarter we had the opportunity to not facilitate, but have an initial networking event with ERG corporate partners. So every individual that was part of ERGs for all the Chamber's corporate partners were invited to this event. And it was just an opportunity to connect and get to know who was in the space and talk about things that we had going on for the year. And one of the upcoming ideas that we have is we really want to facilitate conversation around allyship, because not to get politically correct or anything, but given the current environment that we are in, allyship and like advocating for our individuals in our community and outside of our community, creating that connection and that bridge is the most crucial piece of supporting this community right now. So that's one of the things that we're really hoping to facilitate a conversation around and see what types of things members of ERGs are seeing right now in terms of organizations, if they're pulling anything back or best practices that they're trying to keep implemented so that individuals across the organization feel like they're part of a team.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'll definitely add to that is we have had since February, several events focused around like networking and, re-engaging with the community. And I will admit firsthand, some of the individuals that I've met, partly what we're trying to get a gauge for is, what are you seeing at your corporate? Are they scared? Hitting the gas in terms of, BRGs with an LGBTQIA focus. Plus on top of that too, we've found a lot of success in, how are they changing, and is there a way for us to pivot in a sense that, we can still show up in this space and not have to worry about some of the challenges that we're seeing in the media and in politics and et cetera.
Okay.
And the only other thing I'll add is my goal coming into this role too was to try and attend as many of the general events that we have, just to have representation from our committee. And I learned doing that specifically recently whenever I attended our first Blue Ridge networking event in Shelby. There were a lot of individuals that were very excited that there was an event like that happening in a town like Shelby, but also the fact that we had representation for trying to create connections within the ERG space. And I had a lot of really positive feedback from people that attended that event, and even had one individual that really wanted to join. So yes. Networking is definitely a big piece of it, but it's also just visibility. Like sure. That to me, that like I mentioned with just advocacy and allyship, visibility and showing up is the biggest piece and like makes the biggest impact. Just you being there, and then the rest that follows obviously plays into that, but just physically showing up is crucial.
Huge.
So I want to add to that because, Nick, I feel like you're cutting part of that. When we had talked about this, can you tell them what you saw on the outside of the building when you walked in?
So this particular business is a really big supporter of the LGBT community in Shelby. And for those of you that don't know, Shelby is historically a very conservative town and just about an hour outside of Charlotte.
Sure.
And this particular brewery, they in their main brew room, tap room, they have a pride flag hanging in the window, a Dale Earnhardt flag hanging in the window, and a North Carolina state flag hanging. Defines the epitome of North Carolina.
That's amazing.
As a whole, but it's just really incredible to see that type of display of support in a place like that. And
authentic support, because obviously Dale Jr. next to
exactly.
We love our NASCAR.
That was really great. And a little bit of a plug for Montana, who's our director of the Blue Ridge region.
Yeah, that's Montana Payne.
That particular business is going to be hosting a brunch in the Shelby area, and then the next networking event for them is actually going to be in Newton,
like Danica Patrick drag or something like that. You know,
I'm here for it.
But like I said, showing up and just providing that visibility and that safe space for people to come to, people will show up. We had at the Blue Ridge event, we had people come all the way from as far away as like Lake Lure and Chimney Rock and Hendersonville.
Which is what, about 45 minutes away from Shelby?
Yeah, like so it's about 2 hours from Charlotte. So as you can imagine, it's at least an hour drive for them. We had a guy come from Morganton, which is an hour.
That's commitment.
Yeah, so I mean, providing those opportunities and continuing to grow and expand and provide those opportunities because the western part of the state is huge.
Yes.
And to your point, we are the Carolinas Chamber. So I love seeing that we're starting to do that. And it's our goal to help kind of create those connecting points and make sure that we have individual representation.
Okay. Yeah. So I have a two-for question next. Do you all need help on your committee, like volunteers? And
absolutely.
What do you need help with? And then here's the second part. How would somebody contact you to join?
Absolutely. So primarily, which we'll put our emails at the bottom. Email is the best way. The other thing is to come to some of the events. So we're heavily present on social media, so Instagram, Facebook, maybe some other things, but find a way to plug in at one of the events, and 9 times out of 10, if us aren't there, one of us is there.
Right.
So with that being said, we're very approachable. Just either we'll find you or just come seek us out. Outside of that, that's probably the best way that you can reach us.
I do know, and this is a way that several people have already kind of like reached out to us, is we do have an interest submission form on the chamber website that people can go to.
And we can put that link there as well.
And so there's a page about every committee on the chamber's website, and people can submit an interest form and learn about it or want to join and just see what the committee is about. As far as what we use volunteers for is really creating that cadence of communicating groups, but also making sure that it represents a diverse voice and also addresses the needs of employees of these organizations and businesses in the Carolinas. And
so you're looking for somebody like in HR or somebody that's a BRG or
I mean those are really great individuals to have, and that would be kind of like a primary focus, but at the same time we don't want to sway away anyone who's interested in providing that connection and providing that facilitative support of employees of these corporate partners. So I would say anyone that has participated in an ERG, is part of an ERG today, or is in like the HR or like culture management or benefit type of space for different companies, definitely, if you're interested in connecting and finding out more, reach out to us for sure.
Please.
Okay. Awesome. Trying to think of what else to ask you. Is there something that you want to talk about that I haven't asked?
Oh, sweet Jesus. Let's see. Did we tell them about the other events that we wanted to do?
Not yet, other than we want to host an event kind of to facilitate conversation about allyship. One idea that we discussed is leveraging that conversation to host focus groups for individuals of ERGs and BRGs throughout the region to kind of dig deeper into what's been working really well the last few years for ERGs and supporting kind of like a good support framework for employees of the LGBT community, but then also what's not working. Like, what are some pain points that we're seeing, and how can we share those practices and kind of make sure that there is like an open pool of support too.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely have all your links, both your chamber titles and outside of chamber titles, and the links to get to the submission form. So I very much appreciate you both being on here today, and you're welcome to come back anytime. So
thanks for having us. We'll definitely be back.
This has been the Resource Connect Committee conversation with Nick Randone and Richard Stevens for Sweet Tea and Economy. We'll see you in the next episode.